Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Shaping the Future of Secure Cloud, sponsored by Raytheon on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is John DeSimone, the Vice President for Cybersecurity Training and Services at Raytheon Intelligence and Space. John, before break, we're talking a lot about the shared responsibility model of cloud computing, how both the customer, in this case agencies, and the provider must understand where the roles and responsibilities lie, how they overlap. And this leads us down the path to ask, well, shouldn't agencies maybe then just have a private cloud? Isn't it easier just to create your own internal cloud? It's better than a data center, but it's not as concerning as the public cloud.
Well, I guess like everything and probably in life, there's really no, or very few things in life have absolutes. So I would say there's no absolute answer to that. In some cases, a private cloud may be absolutely what you need to do, but that would be based on the mission application and the data needs. I think when you think about it from a security or cost, you're really not going to be able to make a strong business case that says a private cloud is going to be somewhat less expensive than a cloud. It's just you're going to have to duplicate the infrastructure. You got a CapEx piece versus pure OpEx. You're going to have to duplicate the skill sets, and then you're going to have to take on the responsibility for providing that security around that infrastructure that you were paying for from a cloud service provider. So I don't think you can make a cost justification, but obviously if a workload requires it, or you're really concerned from access to how you're setting up users to people provide whatever application you're providing, then you can make decisions around private cloud from that area.
I know certain intelligence agencies and certain national security type agencies have moved down that path, but not totally. I think you still see even the Justice Department is using a lot of, for instance, commercial cloud. But you talk to maybe ATF or DEA type, and they say, "Oh, we have our own private cloud, but we're using the Justice Cloud or the Justice Access for things like email and kind of the low hanging fruit type of things." Is that a trend you're seeing among some of those national security type of agencies?
Yeah, I think that the cloud trend's been there for a while. Whether it's been done in a on-prem or some form of private, specialized cloud, because I think the issue is, whether it's an intelligence or whether it's DoD or what, the question is, can you spend the money towards the mission? How much dollars can you put on mission versus on things that need to support the mission? So if you think about, the infrastructure cost or cost to maintain infrastructure, if you can figure out how to optimize those dollars and transition those dollars, pieces of those dollars into true mission impact, I think all the customers want to do that. And I think the question is, how do you do that fast and efficiently and securely as you move information or data or applications in the cloud? And I think the other thing that pushes a lot of our customers towards that is the speed to innovate. Because if the belief is if especially if you're doing application development, having some form of cloud infrastructure available to your development teams, and that they can be able to produce on demand, quickly access different VMs that they want to develop applications, then it allows them to innovate faster versus a slower, the old way we used to do things. So I think those two areas we've seen a push and we've seen a movement for years. And besides, the third piece, I guess I would hit on is data, right? So being able to manage, identify, track, manage, and basically pure data orchestration across an enterprise. Data keeps, increasing exponentially, and the organization's ability to act on it in real time and then manage, store it is just going through the roof. So if a cloud platforms provide some advantage to store the information, our customers are looking at that very, very hard.
What I've seen over the last year and a half, maybe even 2 years, is when we talked earlier about the hybrid environment. But recently, and I've talked to some of the folks in DoD, I've talked to some of the folks in the intelligence community, they're also starting to say, okay, well, maybe we could use the cloud for a secret or top secret environment as well. In fact, I talked to one CIO recently from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and they were talking about, for instance, we instead of having two boxes right underneath my desk, they can just have that one box if they could get to that secret environment. I know there's some sensitivities here, John, so we don't necessarily have to talk broadly, but is that another area that you're seeing a lot of interest in? How do there's so much confidence in the cloud and so much better understanding that DoD, Intel agencies and others are saying, how can we put our data in a secret cloud or in a top secret cloud?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I mean, cloud consumption and how businesses are utilizing cloud, when I say businesses, I include the government, obviously, in that it's only increasing and it's not going to decrease. So the utilization and the needs and the requirements and the applications for cloud are going to continue to grow. So absolutely, you can say, look, at some point, secrets, you're going to have secure, classified information in that type of environment. We're gonna have to figure that out, make sure that the controls are in place. It's definitely gonna have to perform, but it's not. I don't think it's a question of if; it's a question of when, because that's just for everything we just talked about. It provides those benefits, and we need to provide those in both in an unclassified and a classified environment.
And that also leads us down the path of DevSecOps, another popular topic. And that's really the key to a lot of these efforts around cloud and moving to the cloud. Can agencies, if you will, shift to the left? I hear that a lot now of the security. So you're getting the security piece earlier on, you're understanding where your vulnerabilities exist, and you're fixing them much sooner. Uh, how does that play into which cloud you use and which workloads you move to the cloud, and how you secure them? Talk a little bit about the DevSecOps idea.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, so the sec piece is really critical. I mean, obviously, you want to be able to deploy applications fast, and that's the whole fast and efficient, and innovate quicker and get them, to the production line, if you will, at a much increased speed. But the security piece, once you roll these applications out, they're vulnerable. That's a problem. So the security piece, being able to put that development production line in place and being confident that what you produce has got the right security controls is critical. And then on top of that, as you roll these applications out inside of an enterprise, multiple applications, it's not only securing that one application, is how are you securing every application that comes off the line that need to interface with each other? And that's where you can start to be able to implement some of the foundational pieces of zero trust, right? Making sure your applications have the core capabilities and ability to interact and provide, efficient means to implement your zero trust platform. So it's really critical for the future. I think, I'd like to see more of a holistic approach to it. We tend to see it in the onesie twosies, but I really like to see security start to move to more of the forefront of some of the application development. It's, in the past it was never there, and now people could argue you should start out, in the front with it. It's still somewhere in between, depending on who's, what agency you're dealing with. But I do think, starting with a kind of a security framework on front and then rolling your DevSecOps inside of that, I think is very vital to success.
And then what the other piece to this is ensuring the flexibility is built in, right? You don't want to secure something so great that the users go, I'm not using this, and go around it or use something else or build their own type of application. But again, you don't want it so flexible that attackers can get in. So there's a balance. And walk me through what you're hearing from your agency customers about striking that balance.
Well, you're 100% correct, and that's why I go back. And it's not, we're not trying to, zero trust, not the magic bullet. Don't get me wrong, but it is a very clear representative word for how to think about this problem differently. So when you mentioned locking down an application, which has been the old way, we'll just make it rigid, make it very hard. So what that really did was that extrapolated to, verification, validation, two-step, three-step, or whatever the case may be. So they push that down to the user, where if you look at it and say, look, I'm going to assume I'm breached. I'm going to assume bad actors are everywhere. So I'm going to then figure out how to build applications that can validate every transaction easily. So you don't tend to have to lock down and provide such a tight constraint as you would, because you're trying to keep people just not logging in who aren't supposed to log in. You're going to assume everybody that logged in is a bad actor, and you're going to put the requirement on the application and developers in the system in place to monitor the transaction to verify good or bad. And I think that helps tremendously.
What I've heard over the new approach is no longer trust but verify. It's never trust, always verify. And I think that gets into the DevSecOps model. It gets into this idea of make sure it's flexible enough, but still secure. And I think that's the where the future is heading. And let's talk a little bit about that, John. What you see, today, how agencies are dealing with cloud is pretty good. They can do better. What do they need to keep in mind as they continue to move more applications, more data to the cloud?
Well, like I said, I think, we talked about it a lot in the last session. I mean, they got to be mindful what their responsibilities are, and they really have to start with a holistic approach to the problem. So when they have to know what they're putting in the cloud, they have to know what's interacting with that, and they have to know what sensors are available and what sensors are available across the network. And once they can understand and have that they are the integrators, we said last session, and they're responsible for the end-to-end security, then it's a matter of setting up the right zero trust platform to allow them to monitor and interact with different events that are on the system. I think eventually, you didn't ask this, but the next step will be how to start to become proactive in defending. So I think once you're in that space, then the question becomes, what are the tools that we can do to actually, and close to real time, once a threat is identified on the network, react to it and make sure the threat is mitigated as quickly as possible, versus always this 2 or 3 month or whatever the time frame is lag into where you figured out your breach and trying to find out what happened. But are you able to actually do more real time intervention on different threats as they pop up on your network?
And that's one of the huge benefits of zero trust and some of the tools that are built around inside this framework. As we see more agencies and more organizations offering artificial intelligence, machine learning tools, they can get to that predictive place. And I think that's what is missing in the conversation today a lot. Everyone expects we all should know what we don't know. And that just is not the case. We only know what we know. And I think that's when you see some of the other challenges with the most recent incidents, that I think is a key piece. Is that the also part of the future? Is are you starting to see that request for AI tools, ML tools to really get to the stuff we don't know?
Well, no, I think that's always been there, and I think that's just ever growing, right? It goes back to the data that's increasing. So all the AI tools and the ML tools are required because human beings aren't going to be able to process and go through these amounts of data at these network speeds. So as the network's increasing, the data is increasing, we need the AI tools to be able to identify risk. And then, my view is once we see these risks identified to a given threat level, then we need another set of tools. I think that's the next generation of tools, is going to be to take an active response inside your own network. Whereas we're going to have to, the active defense is going to have to start to shape our core computer defense network so that we can immediately take servers offline or isolate networks, do whatever, a series of remediations to go at these malware and these bad actors that get inside the system.
We're starting to see some of that. I know the energy department has some honeypots they're putting together, but really advanced honeypots, not the old school ones that you and I probably have heard a lot about. And we're also looking at some of the changes that are happening within some of the advanced research project agencies, whether it's DARPA or IARPA or HARPA and the like. So there's a lot coming, and when it comes, you and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But unfortunately, John, we're out of time for today. So let me thank my guest. John DeSimone is the Vice President for Cybersecurity Training and Services at Raytheon Intelligence and Space. John, always a pleasure to catch up.
Thank you, Jason. Enjoyed.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Shaping the Future of Secure Cloud, sponsored by Raytheon on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Raytheon.